Edgework Consulting, we're a small consulting firm. We're actually based in Somerville right now, but our work is local, national, and international. Meg was just asking how often we're out of the country, but we have about 2 months out of the year where we're overseas, and we do a lot of work in post-conflict areas all over the world. And locally, we work with corporations, nonprofit organizations, and also the academic sector. So we really love to be working in all those different buckets, because I think when you cross-pollinate, experiences and information and content and research, we think that that's where you find the really magical stuff. But at the core of all the work that we do is really the idea of leveraging relationships. So that's what we're all about, and that it comes out in employee engagement with corporations and the manager and the employee relationship. It comes out in the youth work that we do around trauma and the relationships between adults and young people. And then we do a lot of work with we're actually with just grassroots nonprofit organizations. So entrepreneurs who are, we come into the picture around 1 year in, when people are figuring out what's our impact, what's our curriculum look like, what are we really doing in the world with our product or our idea or innovation. So that's another, I think, interesting intersection. We're happy to talk about any of the projects that we're working on. But tonight we're going to talk, just about really developing your team for productivity. I mean, there's no reason to really work on a team unless you're getting a greater output, ideally. So we want to be really appreciative and think about what are the things that work on teams and give you some solutions for navigating a better experience and hopefully a bigger output there. Okay. So what I want to do quickly is have you just think about this at your table. So we're thinking about teams that we've been a part of. It doesn't have to be the team, a team at Harvard or a team you're working on now, but a work team. You could have been an intern in a company working on a small group or a small project. Sports teams, fraternities, sororities, any groups, clubs that you've been on. What is the best team experience you've ever had, and what is the worst team experience you've ever had? So just at your small tables with mouths full of food, we're going to have just a quick dialogue. What are some of the things that characterized your best team experience, and what are some of the things that characterize the more challenging team experiences? Okay. Okay, we'll bring it back just to the large group. I heard some really good examples of good team experiences, bad team experiences. Just to paint the picture for us, what are some of the words you would use to describe the worst team? Or what are some of the things that came up about your experiences on the worst teams? More challenging teams, I should say. Tanvir? Okay. So we had too many leaders, and Tanvir, Tanvir was sharing that you put this team together thinking that's a good thing, but then you realize, oh my goodness, we have all these leaders and it's actually causing us some problems. Okay, so we have too many leaders. What else? We'll just get a few up here real quick. A lack of leadership, okay. Yeah, these experiences are very personal, right? And dynamic, and they change constantly. So we have too many leaders, lack of leadership. What else? Yep. Matt.
People not committed.
Not committed. Yeah, I think you're talking about a lack of support, right? Not really trying to help. Okay. Okay. Yeah. Oh, sorry, Sunny and then Zach.
Bad chemistry.
Yes. Okay. Bad chemistry, Zach? Lack of communication. Okay. Yes.
One bad apple.
One bad apple. How true is that? Okay, so one bad apple. Anything else? Okay, what about if we were to make the list of the best teams? What were some of the things that were happening there, some of the characteristics of the best teams? Yes?
Strong trust among all the members.
Strong trust among all the members. That's great. Diverse? Yep, I heard you say it was a very multicultural team that you were working on. Yep. Diverse backgrounds, perspectives, styles, which we're going to talk about later.
Specific rules.
Yep. That's huge. When you can get to the point where those are clear and specific, you're in a good place. Zach?
Share accountability.
Share accountability? Yep. Okay. Yes?
Motivated, focused, committed.
Motivated, focused, and committed. Huge. That's the dream. Right? And committed. Okay. What? Democracy, okay. And what was happening on your team that you characterize as democracy? Was it shared decision making? What was it for your team?
Decision making, and if someone not in the leadership position will have a really good idea,
Mm-hmm.
and everybody will agree with that. They will go for it, and put
Okay, so the way you put ideas out there, get some weighing in on it, and then go with the best one or the one that everyone's on board with. Great. Okay. Yes.
I'd say some of the best things I've been on is when people have not been, they're not on a, they're not seeking power. They're okay with taking orders and being a follower. They don't have to be a top dog. Which
So we
is a
have-
challenge at Harvard. A lot of people, a lot of people like to be, I'm the man kind of thing. I'm the top dog. And
Yeah. So we have
let down your pride sometimes. So humble, I guess.
followers. Not all don't have to be top dog. Okay. And humble. Okay. Great. So what's the value that you get out of an experience that has all of this? Strong execution, right? What else? When you have people who are humble, you have clear roles, you have accountability, you're motivated, you're focused. Success. Okay, so maybe we got it pretty much summed up. There's strong execution, there's success. What were you going to say, Tanvir? Flexible? Yeah, that's one of the most amazing environments to work in, a flexible environment. We can take it in this direction, we can take it in this direction. We have followers, we have leaders. So what we want to do is be thinking about, this is where we want to be, obviously. And there's all these challenges and things to work through to get there. But we want to think about, we know that this exists, we know that we can get there. And what are some tools that get us there? Okay. So just quickly, we know, we said there's strong execution and teams are good for you. I think just in general, one of the things we've noticed in the corporate world is that probably by 2020, people are going to be hiring teams. That was one of the things that we've been looking at in the research. Hiring full teams, people that make other people better. That's a huge characteristic that folks are looking for. And the reason is because teams really are good for you. You have a better product. So teams have endurance. A lot of this is all, from the research and things that we've been looking at. They last longer. So one person might have a bad day, the other two people don't. You're still working because of that. You don't just turn it off because you're having a bad day. So just that idea that, you have endurance as a team. It gives you a sense of how you're doing. I think Matt was talking a little bit about how he's worked with his high school friends, and they have a company, and when you're checking in and you see the strengths of other people, it helps you figure out where your gaps are. Not in a negative way, but if you have someone else, you think you're good at writing the business plan, someone else brings a business plan, you're like, whoa, that blows my business plan out of the water. It helps you figure out where you need to focus, and it gives you a real measurement, not against someone else who's way high up there, but someone who's your actual peer. Okay. Makes you more accountable. We talked about accountability. Helps you learn how others are thinking. We talked about a diverse team. So how other people are thinking is critical. We have to know that's the special sauce. Where are they coming from? And that's where the questioning comes in, why we listen on teams, why we ask lots of questions, because we want to ultimately know what people are thinking and how they arrive at those decisions. And it makes you more comfortable asking questions. So if we're all, some of your teams have mentors. If a mentor says something and all of you are thinking, what is he or she even talking about? Hopefully, when you figure out all of you thought, what is he or she talking about, you went and asked for more clarification. So ideally, it moves you towards asking questions. And it keeps keeping an eye out for you personally and professionally. So just have someone who expects you to be there, expects you to show up, is going to have a little more insight into, just knowing when you're off your game a little bit and giving you a little bit of a check-in and support. Okay. So that's the amplified piece there. Right. So what we're going to do is just look a little bit at the research in terms of successful teaming, and one of the researchers, this is stages of team development, is from 1965, Bruce Tuckman. So it's been around for a long time, but all the research now really supports that this is really how teams form and how they develop. Okay, so the stages of team development. Has anyone ever heard of this, the stages of team development? Matt, a little bit? Okay, so you'll be familiar. We have these 4 different stages. Okay, so what do you think the first stage is in looking at what we call these different stages? So we have norming, we have performing, we have forming, and we have storming. What's the first stage? Forming. Okay. Forming is characterized by what? Your team just came together. What are some of the feelings? What's the situation look like? What's the environment? Yeah. Excited, optimistic. You're bringing a little bit of your reserve self to the table maybe, okay? Looking forward to the future. What do you think the second one is? Okay, this table has a heavy storming voice over here. Storming is next. We'll talk a little bit about when you're bypassing the crevasse, which was our title. Hopefully you can go to norming. But what usually happens, and people invite this because this is how you get past that, is storming, because you've started to be more real. You've started to notice differences that maybe that are challenging to navigate at first. So conflict, differences, arguments, not quite sure what your norms are going to be yet. You're figuring all of that out. So the third one is what then? Norming. Yeah. So third one is norming, figuring out your ground rules, how you work best together, role clarification, a lot of the things that you talked about. The last one is process of elimination, performing, so getting to our high-performing stage. Okay. So these are just characteristics of some of the things that we're thinking, and this might be familiar as we're reflecting on our teams. So we have, this is exciting. I think that was what we had over here. So we're just, we're starting off, the morale is high. This is really exciting. So now we're plotting morale versus time together. This is taking a lot of time to figure out how we're going to work well together. Okay. This might not be worth it. Is that a familiar feeling? Like, why are we even doing this? This is taking a lot of time. We have to meet. We have to get to the iLab. We're convening. I don't even know if this is worth it. This is painful. Okay, this is getting better. So maybe at this point you're working towards norms. You've worked through some conflict. There's a light at the end of the tunnel, potentially. And a little more hope that this could work. And then in the end, we have this is working with an exclamation point, right? So we're happy to be there. What do you think is the main difference between this is exciting versus this is working? Why do we have this is working higher than this is exciting?
Because while it's working, you're excited again.
Yeah, I didn't even think about that. Yeah, it's working. You have excitement within the fact that it's working, right? Yeah. So exciting is a given. But this is working. You already know that you've gone through the conflict. You've gone through the hard part of teaming. You've gone through, I don't know if this is worth it. Oh, yes, it's worth it. And now you see some of the results. This is exciting is very aspirational. So this is exciting. I think we're going to be able to do it. This is fun. Let's go. So there's not as much evidence in that piece. Okay? Yes?
Is it possible by themselves?
Great question. So these stages can recycle, start over with any change. So you can have a new addition, a new member, and you actually, if you think about the norming piece or the conflict that happens during storming, what do you all think? If a new member joins a team, are they going through this by themselves, or are they pulling the whole team into that?
Pull the whole team in.
Yeah, so the whole team will basically either they have really solid norms and they slot that person in and they're on board with the culture and how things work for that team, or they disrupt it a little bit and you gotta back up and figure out, you might have different norms and different ways of working well together because of the addition of that team member that brings a different skill set, a different perspective, and all of that. Yeah, so it's a tough one because you might be at, this is working, and then someone leaves or someone joins and you're starting over again. Okay. Great question. Okay, so what I want to do is think, I'm going to give each table a stack of cards. And what we want to do now is start thinking about, we saw, the stages of development, where teams go, where we want teams to go. And then individually, what are the roles of someone, or the competencies of someone who works really well on the team? So what we're trying to figure out is, who is the best teammate? What do they look like? What do they bring to the table? So I'm going to hand out a stack of cards with a bunch of competencies and characteristics of individuals. And what I want you to do at your table is choose, this is going to be hard as a table, especially because you're not working on the same team, but what are the most important 3 for your teams that you're working on? What do you think are the most important 3 out of these 10? Okay? Okay, let's bring it back to the large group. Which group wants to go? Just give us a quick what 3 you had. Not a justification, but just quickly, let's hear what's out there. I'm making eye contact with this group back here. Yeah.
So the first one we choose is actually action orientation. We think it's very important for the team member to get things done.
Okay.
So if you, so that's the one we choose. So and the other 2 are loyal.
Okay, so we got some action orientation, loyal, and openness. Okay, we just want to hear what everyone has just to get an idea of what's out there, and then we'll expose the answers from the research, which are not necessarily right or wrong compared to what you have. Okay, yep. Creative, supportive, and action orientation. Awesome. Okay. What do we have back here?
Action orientation, creative, and positive personal style.
Okay, so we have positive personal style as a new one in the mix. Okay. Any of these 3 teams here?
Yeah, we got action orientation, supportive, and openness.
Okay, action orientation, supportive, and openness. Good. Right here? Are you ready?
Action orientation, forward-looking, positive personal style.
Nice. Another one for positive personal style. And forward-looking as a new addition. Okay.
Creative, openness, and supportive.
Amazing. Okay. So we heard a little bit of some consistency there around action orientation, a couple supportives, a couple openness, creative. Okay. So let's get a drum roll, please. Drum roll. We got tables. You can give me a drum roll. Okay, we have. Did pretty good. We have. Oh, that's a. And the number 1 competency listed, and this was across about 5,000 interviews in all different industries. I know what happened. This group had all 3. But I just want to emphasize that all of these things are obviously important, and I think someone mentioned, maybe it was, what's your name? The stripe?
Onye?
Onye? mentioned, it depends on the team, right? It depends a little bit on the team what you're looking for. But this was just, you know, in general, if we're bringing these things to the table as a team member, we're setting ourselves up for some success in the ways that we need to navigate the team. Openness, is anyone surprised about that one? I heard a couple cheers, excited. You chose it, but okay. Anyone else surprised you didn't choose it? You didn't choose it and you're surprised, okay. So why do we think this one is so important based on the definition that we have there? Why is openness so important for a successful team? Yeah, Matt.
The problems, when you get to storage, they're just going to fester and they're not going to be addressed. If you're not open with the problems, they're not going to be solved.
Yeah.
Well, and if you're not open to another opinion that may not be what you want to do, I mean, you're not going to work well with the team either.
Yeah, so there's both sides of the definition actually represented there. One is, can you hear others' ideas and perspectives? And two, are you bringing the problem solving, are you willing to put the problem out there? And so I think that's the interesting twist on the definition of openness as it relates to being a good team member. It's, can you put the problem out there and surface it and get some action orientation around it, right? So being open to conflict, open to, yeah. Cor, what were you gonna say?
Oh yeah, I mean, people are different. Each one has his own strengths and weaknesses.
Mm-hmm.
So if we understand that and then we're open to say, bring that there is this kind of thing. Maybe I don't understand this. But others can help me solve this problem.
That is amazing. So being able to ask for help, that is incredible asset and one of the things we struggle a lot with. But asking for help is another form of openness and another critical piece for team success. Great point. Okay. Okay, so just thinking about those competencies and all the ones that you were sort of milling around, all of them are important. Okay, so when we have those things not in existence, we tend to derail. And these are some of the ways we were thinking about, you know, the particular teams that you're working on as you're, you know, looking at entrepreneurship and starting off with a lot of passion and ideas and you know, a mix of people in that either phase themselves out or stay around forever. So the general challenges in that work that we listed, hopefully everyone can see, is these seem like simple things: the frequency, duration, and purpose of a meeting. How often are we meeting? When are we meeting? What is the purpose of our meeting? That can be an opportunity to reserve and not have a lot of tension, or an opportunity to really amplify and make people upset, right? The level of effort in advance of meeting. So if we're convening on the work that we're doing, the projects that we're launching, you know, what effort are people putting into the meeting in advance? And are we all putting the same? Are we all not putting the same? And if we're not putting the same effort, maybe that's okay, but the understanding around that is really critical to figure out. Defining leadership roles, we talked about that with our best and worst team experiences. Balancing different individual priorities, especially in the work that you're doing, people may be involved for very different reasons. Does that resonate for folks in the room? Okay, we see a couple heads nodding. And not necessarily, different priorities is not the challenge, it's balancing the different priorities. Okay, so having different priorities is okay, that's natural at this point. Standards of quality for deliverables. A lot of teams are derailed when I think this is a great product, it's ready for a pitch, and someone else thinks, are you kidding me? We got another month of work to do on this before it's ready to be pitched. So that difference in the standard of quality for when things are sort of moved to the next level. The allocation of work, I think that's probably pretty familiar, just figuring out who's doing what. Discussion participation, so, you know, are you setting up meetings or forums for communication? I think we talked about lack of communication for worse team experiences. How are people participating in discussions? Even thinking, what did it look like at your table? Did everyone share something? How did you do that? It looked like everyone was sharing something, but how did you do that? It's very intentional. It might be how you're sitting. It might be how I set up the room. It might be that you have name tags. You have food, I don't know. But really thinking about how did that happen that everyone shared something? Did someone at your table say, hey, Sunny, what do you think? So very, very specific and intentional there. And then social time versus work time. That can be, a lot of times people are running in and out. They want the meeting to be very, this is what we're doing. Other folks have come off a long day of and they want to socialize. So you got to figure out that tension. Okay. And specific challenges, what do you do when someone isn't pulling his or her weight, is falling behind, is going through a challenging personal situation? That can happen in your year of, you're focused for the year and all of a sudden someone falls out for a month in terms of their focus because they have something going on personally. Has a conflict with someone else on the team. So maybe that new person comes in, they have a conflict with just one other person on the team. How does everyone else buffer around that? Someone's less likable, isn't open to feedback, and isn't as passionate as you are. Anything else that we're missing from your experiences to date with the teams that you're working on right now that are specific challenges or seem to pop up over and over again? How do we do with this list?
What do you mean by less likable?
So the one about the positive personal style, some people just have a likable style, a style that's not misunderstood, and maybe that's a better way to say it. And some people have a style that's misunderstood. It doesn't just attach to everyone in the room or in the group. And so people and people will phrase it like that, and that's where, well, I just don't like this person, and they're on my team. You know, that's an issue in itself, right? To have that approach, but that's a point of real data where people derail. Yes.
On the issue of misunderstood style, how do you re-rail that? If you see it veering off and say you're not the leader, what can you do to redirect that? Because sometimes it comes from people, to be specific, I've seen where someone might think there's a race issue when it's really a personality issue, and there would be confusing signals, or
So
a gender issue when it's not.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's the issue is there's those layers, is we don't really know. Sometimes we don't know what that issue is. Sometimes it's unconscious bias, sometimes it's not. And questioning is actually, we're not going to get into that skill very specifically, but one, a norm or a rule on a team could be when you're starting to feel that, ask that person a question. That's a very specific strategy for, learning. That might just help you learn enough about that person, that conflict, that misunderstood, piece where you're just like, I don't like this person, we don't gel. If you just put more questions out there and learn about the person. I know that sounds a little, vague, but I think a lot of times we'll talk to people about, if you're really good at asking questions, sometimes you can uncover what that is and learn enough to get past that. So, it depends on what the situation is exactly, but that would be one strategy I would recommend. And one thing that you can really learn, a specific skill set for how to ask the right questions and when, and what to do with that. Yeah, that's a good question. Okay. All right. Anyone else have anything that has come up as a challenge? How does yep.
I think people feeling undervalued, because of whatever, difference in comp or whatever.
Yeah, that's a great point. And feeling valued is one of the number one ways that you feel engaged in your work and engaged with your team. So we should definitely add that one. How valued do you feel in this experience and what you're offering? Yeah. Yep.
Maybe politics within the team.
Great. I saw a lot of smiles when you said that. So politics within the team, right? I'm sure there are some real politics that you all are dealing with as you're working on your teams, and also pulling people into your teams. Oftentimes hopefully you're magnetic in your ideas and you're bringing people in, but there's politics that come with that as well. Yeah, it's great. Okay, so, oh yeah, go ahead, Thomas.
If someone is less likable, I agree it would be a challenge, but it could be a very good team even though you don't really like each other or you don't get along, but you may even know that you just, you could be very productive in some ways.
Yeah.
Like for example, in sports, if you have a coach, maybe the athletes even hate him, but they know that
Right.
he can do a good job, so they're a great team, but they don't really like each other.
Yeah, that's a critical point. The likability is not the key to success. It's a place where some people get derailed in thinking and pull their team apart. But it's not necessary for success.
What if it's the opposite? Someone is very likable, but doesn't really contribute anything that's helping the success.
Yeah, and then that raises the other issues. Is he or she pulling her weight? Are they accountable? Are they holding others accountable? Yeah. So, and that's we're looking to do the best work that we can. It's not about friendship, and that's why we talk so much about teams in this environment, because it's about getting the work done. It's not about developing friendships, although having relationships can facilitate getting the work done. Yeah.
In terms of just likability, some people find that important in team members, and some people just don't find that important. They go to work and they say this is a professional relationship, and so they don't care at all if the people are likable or not.
Yeah.
And I think it depends on the individual person, whether or not they value that in the other individuals.
Yeah, that's a great point. And we're going to talk a little bit about styles, and some individual styles are that matters so much. Am I likable? And some other styles are like, this doesn't matter at all. I'm going to criticize your work, and it's separate from criticizing you. Yeah.
Another thing I've noticed is just the structure of friendships outside of work on the team. Sometimes they'll work really well together, but then two people go out to beer afterwards and the other guy doesn't, and he feels left out, and that can sort of create a conflict, even if it's not sort of specifically just between two people.
Yeah, that's a great point. The behaviors that make you feel like you're part of this in-group or this out-group, and the trickle-down effect that has. It seems casual, we're going out for a drink, but what does that mean for other people on the team if you're connected in that way where you like each other to hang out and then other folks aren't involved in that? Yeah, it's very, very, very interesting point. I was working with a group of students at MIT, and they said that the piece around alcohol, some groups like to go out for a beer and others, that's not the comfortable situation. So is that really inclusive if that's the way your team celebrates, and really thinking about, how does that bring people into the picture or not? Yeah. Okay, so back to the stages of team development, just thinking about the places where we can derail, and the point that we made about, is storming, or can norming happen before storming? Can we avoid storming? Can we bypass the crevasse? Right? We'll get to a little bit where we're coming from with the title. So can we do this? Yes, in theory, you can. And as I said, you don't have to necessarily think there's no way out when you're going through a storm. That's important to go through. But you can put in place an opportunity to go from forming to norming. Okay? Then that's by accelerating and putting this norming stage in front of the storming. Okay? So what we want to do now is talk about developing norms on teams, because that's ultimately the way that you're going to get there. You're going to be able to facilitate and capture the conflict in a healthy way that pushes you closer towards performing. So creating team norms. First, just what is a norm in your opinion? Yeah, exactly. It's behavior, expectations. Yes. Did you have? Okay. Yeah, so behaviors as well. So this is the way we do things here on this team, right? This is how we do things, this is how we behave. These are our expectations, okay? So we have standards and principles that the team decides are essential for working effectively together. Okay, so right on the same page there. Sometimes we'll call them ground rules. Some people don't like to use the word rules, but it's just the way that we're going to work together as a team. Okay, so this is where we want to get pretty specific with the types of things that we need to do as a team. This could be months after you've started, or it could be ideally at the beginning if we're looking at the point of trying to skip over the storming piece. But it's never too late to be thinking about having norms for these areas. We want norms about responsiveness in communicating. I'm planning a workshop right now with 2 people, one's in the Midwest, one's in New York City. One's really responsive on email, the other one I haven't heard from in months. And so the conversation we're going to have is, what's better? Would you rather set up a call? Would you rather we, have 4 meetings set up now that are going to happen over the next couple of months? But really figuring out what is communication going to look like and having a conversation about what works for you. Punctuality and timekeeping, having a conversation again about how quickly do we need to move through our meetings? What are we going to do with a 10-minute late start? Do we arrive a few minutes early to connect with each other? Thinking about the things like that. Listening, talking, and turn taking. So we talked about having diverse teams, how important that is. But if we don't give the opportunity for everyone's voice, then we're not really accomplishing the strengths that can come from that. Decision making. How do you make decisions? We had an example about democracy. What does decision making look like on your team? And this is all different for every team. So what you do within these areas is based on the team, but you should be talking about each of these areas. These are the critical areas. Leadership and meeting facilitation. Sometimes we just show up to meet, but there's no plan for who's going to actually lead that meeting, right? We see some heads shaking over here. So who's meeting it? Who's leading the meeting? Do we want to bring in an outside facilitator? Do we want to talk to someone, staff in the iLab, to just push us through our vision, our mission statement, whatever it might be? Thinking about who's actually facilitating and leading that. Feedback. This is a really important piece and has to do with the importance of openness. If we want to bypass the storming, we have to be willing to give each other feedback. That's the root of all relationships. As soon as we stop giving feedback, we have no opportunity to grow in our relationships. So and then just talking about how does feedback happen on our team. Does anyone have any examples of any norms or behaviors that they have as a team that has worked in any of these areas? Are we thinking about some of them? Are they challenges that we're having right now? What do you think?
Well, I just noticed I'm an assistant clerk, did some minutes. One of the other parties gave recognition to the others in the review team, saying so-and-so did so much work, et cetera, et cetera. And I'm thinking, you don't have to do that. But it still felt good to be, so it's useful, I think, to provide recognition that's not solicited and that can, that can earn a lot of value.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's a form of feedback too. So we need to, feedback isn't just about what's not working, but it's about promoting and celebrating what is working. And if someone does that, it doesn't have to be every first 5 minutes of the meeting we're gonna praise each other or recognize each other. But hopefully it comes out and you see the value of that, and then it becomes part of the culture.
That was automatic on the part of someone who was issuing this statement. It seems like that was their pattern. They always intentionally do that.
Okay, yeah, and that works too.
And so this was in a different setting, and I thought, well, that's interesting.
Yeah.
I never thought of going out of my way to do that.
To do that. That's a great point. Yeah.
There is a backside to it, and that is that the other members of the team might feel as they're not appreciated enough, that somebody has been taken out and appreciated more than the others. So one has to balance that very, very well. I have experience with that, and I think somehow one has to say to everyone that everyone is doing well. Is it so or not is a different story, but just putting one person up is not always serving the purpose.
Yeah, and it's important to find the strengths from the different styles and different contributions, but to be a good teammate would be looking for those contributions so they can be genuine. That's important for them to be genuine, but for you to be able to recognize from all different folks and their various contributions. Yeah.
Let's say in my experience, like looking back on good teams that I've been on, it's typically been like we're trying to get through some crazy deadline or through some storm, and on the other end it's like like everyone just, you put your head down, just get through it, and on the other end like you say, oh, you know, like you made it, blah blah blah. I really liked how you did this, but you really need to work on this. You know, like we made it, but it would help us in the future if we all kind of try to improve.
Or imagine if you picked your head up a little bit too, what the outcome might have been. If you know the reflection is key, but picking the head up away from the work and looking at the how is the most important thing. How are we getting this done right now? Is there a better way? And we're driving towards the work, of course, at the same time. Yep.
So for a lot of these, I think, like for instance, with software development, there's agile software development, which has a very strict protocol as far as how you should do these things. Like for instance, it's strict time limits around how long meetings should be. They're daily. You set up sprints. You kind of do delegation very effectively. Meetings are facilitated by somebody that's different than the person who's driving the meeting. So I was going to ask the question back to you as far as norms. Is there any kind of research or evidence to support best practices, or given a range of options for how to set up feedback, for instance? Is it best to do it quarterly or daily or whatever?
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely a lot of research out there in all of these areas. I think as far as setting norms, what we've found is, and I'll actually put it on the next slide, this is best practices in terms of what makes a good norm. So we want to have few in number. We think ideally what we've seen is 3, and the same thing goes for building great culture and programs. 3 things to think about. If you thought about what are the 3 behaviors, I love that you guys use that word, what are the 3 behaviors that if you could change those behaviors, your team would be so dynamic and on point? What would those 3 behaviors be? Would it be that people close their computers and they don't work on anything else while you're in your 60-minute meeting? Would it be that everyone comes on time? Like, what are the things? They're different for everyone, so there's not a best 3, but what are the 3 things? If you had everyone adhering to those 3 behaviors that are visible, you can tell that they're happening, what would they be? So that's one best practice. Obviously, we want them linked directly to the goals of the team. So if you had to choose just 3, don't choose 3 that are just great to have. Choose 3 that get you towards whatever it is that you're looking for. If you're looking for a lot of ideas at this stage, what behavior, what norm allows you to get all these ideas, allows you to brainstorm? What are the behaviors or the ways that you work together that equal that particular goal? They're usually built from discussion and debate. So people, a lot of times, teams will say, this is my non-negotiable. On Wednesday nights, I am on a swim team and I go swimming. That's my non-negotiable. I don't want to do a meeting on Wednesday night. So everyone can have a starting point of what their non-negotiable is, and then there's some discussion and debate and hopefully some flexibility and movement there, but that's a good starting point. It shouldn't just be that one person comes up with these as a best practice. And behavioral, you can see it and you can hear it. That's really important, just so you know if you can actually measure how well your team is doing there. And then revisited and revised on a regular basis. So they could change, to your point about someone new comes in, is this still going to be what our norms are now that our team has grown? And they should be revisited frequently in terms of how you're doing with them. The other thing is they're easy to adopt. Ideally, the threshold for being able to do this is minimal. It's easy to adopt in terms of making sure these are things that people can actually do. Yes?
So I just wanted to say one of the things that I've noticed that is incredibly challenging and also very different depending on different teams is number 3, the listening, talking, and taking turns. Because there are some people who want to talk all the time, and there are other people who never want to say anything. And so if you were to say, okay, our norm is we're going to be fair and we're going to go around the room, you might, piss both of those people off, but the person who really believes in fairness
That's a good point.
and is quiet but really wants to talk, you're going to make them really happy. So it's one that I think is very, I think a lot of times people just ignore it, I think.
Yeah, and this doesn't have to be in the listening, talking, and turn taking. Be creative with what that looks like. So some people are going to talk in the meeting space. A norm of your team might be, I know this person has thoughts. She usually shares them later. So tomorrow the email goes out, any other addition, any other insight to add. Or, that doesn't have to be the answer, but think about, oh my goodness, we're not getting that person's insight, and maybe the meeting's not the time for it, but I need to design for that to happen later. So that's a really good point. It's not necessarily in the moment. Maybe the dynamic is that someone talks the whole time, but where's the turn taking happening outside of the context of that?
So I have a personal experience for that. Like, so
Oh,
in
great.
class, the professor will say, I would like to, for now, I would like to hear from people who haven't talked. That would
Great.
shut off the people who are still, who have been talking a lot and who are still so they would just put their hands down, and then people who haven't talked are encouraged.
Great. Perfect. I love it. Yeah, and then if the people who haven't talked don't add anything at that point, maybe you opened it up, you gave the opportunity, and you would decide on your team if calling that person out works or not. And maybe it's just the opportunity to say, all the hands up, people, relax a little bit. Let's, some silence is okay. Let's see if anyone else contributes anything. Almost always someone did, right? Yeah, without having to say, you talk now, but just let's shift the dynamic of who's talking. Yeah, she said that in one of her classes, the professor noticed that there was a dominant group that was always talking. So what he did, I think you said would say, okay, right now I want to hear from the folks who haven't talked yet. So, it's not calling one person out to contribute, but it's giving that opportunity. Great example. Okay, just want to share, back to this slide, a few examples that we've seen is that people come up with no more than 2-hour meetings. So people know what their productivity limit is as a group. That's just an example. You might think about, even if the deadline is approaching, we're not going to all of a sudden have 5-hour meetings. We might have more meetings, but they're the length that we want them to be that we know works for us. Another one I heard recently was a group of students who said that they had this rule called no festering. And basically, every time they convene, if anything was festering, it was frequent that they met and they would say, what's festering? And it would just open the door to not feel bad about the fact that you're annoyed about whatever you're annoyed about on your team, or you're worried about someone not pulling their weight or whatever it might be, but it just, every time they met, which was weekly for this particular group, they were like, no, anything festering, and all of a sudden have that openness piece. We're solving problems, we're putting things on the table, and since people knew to expect it, it wasn't a complaining session, it was just part of what they do to be productive. It was really built into the team example. So be thinking about, I know we're going through this piece a little bit fast, and there weren't a lot of examples to share right here publicly, but be thinking about, do we have these norms? Going back to this slide, do we have behaviors that we want that will work for us in these areas around how we make decisions, how we meet, how we give feedback, how we check in? Okay, so what we're going to do now is be looking at the teamwork styles. So oftentimes we bring, different experiences, different technical skills, and what we want to think about now is, what styles do we bring? I think we were alluding to it a little bit. The, people who care if it's a social environment, or care if it's, I'm likable, they care what people think of them, or people who are just, let's just get this done, I care about the work. So we have all these different kinds of folks when we're working together, and these are real parts of who they are and how they like to work. So what I want to do is just explain, we'll go through each one, and after we go through it, you're going to have to decide which style do you think dominantly aligns with you and how you like to work. Okay, so I will be asking, after we go over it, which one resonates with you. We obviously switch back and forth a little bit. All those styles are representative within us, but which one really resonates with you and how you like to do work. So we have process-focused people. What do we think of when we think of process? What are some synonyms for the word process? Yep. Awesome. Systems, methods, right? They're all about how are we doing this? How are we getting from A to Z? What's the system? What's the evidence? What's the research? How are we doing this? And what is the methodology for getting it done? Okay. What about product focus? Yeah, result. Don't feel bad about it. We have results, 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 right? So product is the end result. We're driving towards the deadline, and we care about the end result. Okay. What about people focus? Yeah, relationship first. Okay. So people folks, they are thinking about, how are we working as a team? Are we having fun? Is there a camaraderie? Are we celebrating as a team? Those are the people focused. The mantras for these groups, I love these. I just want to refer to this. So the product focus people are, we had fun getting it done. Okay. The process focus people are, we had fun making it work. So making it work is critical. And the people focus people are, we had fun together. It was a great time. We still want to get to the end, but we want to have fun along the way. And fun can not necessarily laughing, haha, but the relationship was really solid. Okay. So what I want to do now is have people thinking about which style is most reflective of who you are. Okay. So take a minute, think about, are you a product person? In terms of communication, product people, email is amazing. Text message is amazing. Just get to the point, right? Just do this quickly, get to the point. Communication preference for process people is email with lots of attachments. They love attachments, data, information, okay? Email is okay, but we want to have a lot of attachments. We want to have a meeting where everyone's giving their input and collecting information. And what do you think for people focus? Preferred communication? Meetings? Okay, yeah, so in person, face-to-face. Email was people's worst nightmare, right? Until someone created emoticons. They're like, okay, we can do this email thing. So we have, those types of things are the ways that they show up over and over again. Meetings, product focus wants an agenda, where are we going? People focus wants, let's have a couple minutes to see how we're all doing, and then we'll figure out where we're going. Okay. How's everyone feeling with identifying one of those areas? So the mantras were, the product people are, we had fun getting it done. The process people are, what's the process people? We had fun making it work. So they want the best possible thing. And the people are, we had fun together. So those are the mantras. Okay. All right, so what I want to do is just we're going to end up doing some work on the boards, but anyone who identifies as a process-focused person, can we get a hands up? Process-focused people. Hands up. Round of applause for our process-focused people. Okay. Product-focused. Oh my goodness, product-focused people. Round of applause for our product-focused. And what about people? Woo! Big round of applause for our people. Okay, so what we want to do is have no more than, we want to have 5 to 6 ideally. We'll see how the product dominant group falls out. 5 to 6 people at each board that represents their style. What do you say about yourselves, product people? There are a lot of product people, so anyone can go.
I see focus a lot.
Okay, so focus.
Efficient.
Efficient.
Goal-oriented.
Goal-oriented, yep.
Achiever.
Achievers. Strategic. Yep.
Flexible.
What is it?
Flexible.
Flexible, okay. Just tell me what the goal is, I'll go to it. Tell me what the goal is, I'll go to it, right?
As long as you give the end result, no, I don't care about process. You can procrastinate as long as at the last day you handing in the product, right?
Yep, I don't care about how we're gonna get there or what the changes are. I have a deadline, I have this thing, we're gonna do it. Okay, awesome. And what about what other people say about you? Geeky? Because they wanna get it done, right? Persistent. What else?
Tough. Very tough.
Tough. Yes, oftentimes we think the product people are tough, hard exterior, right? Drive, let's do this. What were you saying?
Saying they're not a people person.
Saying that they're not people.
Not interpersonal.
Yep. And oftentimes the product people, it's not about you, it's not about the relationship, it's about the work, right? So people think, oh, well, you don't like people or you don't like us. It's a good one.
That you're too fast to decide. You might miss something.
Absolutely. That is the hardest thing for a process person to work with a product person is you're going to miss the magic, right? You don't have all the information yet. You're going to miss out, and we're going to get there too fast. And oftentimes we go way too fast, right, on product people. Okay. What about anyone else for what others say about us? Yeah.
So we're slave drivers, abrasive, persistent, determined overachievers.
So, wow. Overachievers, determined, abrasive, like all those characteristics that do we feel like they're important though? Is this driving towards a goal, having a tough exterior? Are these things important on teams? Yeah.
Sometimes.
Okay. I mean, what would we do without if we didn't have any product people?
You never get to the end.
We need the product people to get us to the end. If you look around your team and there's no product people, you got to start to worry about, okay, do we need to make up our own deadlines? Do we need to have someone else check in on us? How do you compensate for that style missing? It's really, all of the styles are absolutely critical to the team. And sometimes they get a bad rap, but without them, where would we be, right? And what about, did we cover all these? Oh, the do's and the don'ts, really important. So what are the do's? What are some hints for all of us who are working with product people? What are the do's?
Straight to the point.
Get straight to the point, right? We work with a lot of EAs, for example, executive assistants who work with very product people. And they say that the biggest hint is when I walk in, I got to say first what I want, and then maybe how we're going to get there, but always lead with the point. Don't start your slide presentations with what's the point. We're going to learn how to bypass the crevasse, right? Not something else, then eventually we'll get there. We want to see the point first. Awesome. Okay, what else for the do's? Yep.
So set clear expectations, fulfill commitments, contribute and collaborate.
Contribute, collaborate, set clear expectations. I think I heard someone say, follow through.
Fulfill commitment.
Yeah, fulfill that commitment. Get it done. Okay. And what about the don'ts? What do we have for the don'ts?
Don't be wishy-washy.
Don't be wishy-washy. Get to the point, right? Make a decision, or at least pretend you have a few to present.
Don't undervalue the value of product people.
It's true. Yeah, product people they're about the work, but they want to be rewarded when they're getting it done. Awesome. So I loved hearing that. Yeah, don't undervalue this person. Okay. What else?
Too many details, too many constraints. Don't have those. We don't care.
Too many details, too many constraints. Do not have those. Too many constraints. Product people, don't tell me how it can't be done. Don't show me the barrier. Let's do this. Yeah, question.
What about accuracy? Seriously, product people can like get it done and it's totally screwed up, but it's done.
But it's
This-
I can't stand, I mean, that's
No?
a TV newscaster
great debate between the process people and the product people, right? And so, is there a medium ground?
No, learn grammar. If you're going to be a communications professional, you know.
Pay attention to the details. Okay, let's move to the process. Let's move to the process, people. Let's hear about what drives them crazy. Grammar, mistakes, accuracy. What do you say about yourselves?
That we clarify, that we're consistent, that we use resources well. So by trying to get it right, we don't misplace the resources, so when you're trying to meet that deadline, you run out of money. If you had us on board, you'd have had the money to finish.
This is true. The process folks are always checking the budget, looking at.
You don't end up having to do a punch list in a third of the time, 2 weeks left and no money left and like a long punch list of everything wrong. So we say that, number 2, you guys say about process people that they're too detail oriented. We just did this, and they get bogged down. They're reliable.
Mm-hmm.
We provide framework. What's number 3?
Well, this is what you want people to
what
do.
What we hope you'll do is give us a framework and some direction and stay on track. So pick a track, at least have one, and then it's better than not having one at all. So if you don't want to have people continue to try to get you on a track, say, hey, we got a track, this is it, and then they'll be like, okay.
Yep.
So that's a way to get around that conflict, is just have one.
Yeah,
Even
very
if it's not
important.
the best one, just have one.
Yep, very
And
important
get over that
for
and get beyond that fast.
for process people is to see, to have, this is the direction we're going, and process people want to hear the whole picture, and I think that's what, Mackenzie, what you meant by the framework, like, what are we doing, how are we getting here?
We like to back up from the end result.
Yep.
So
Let's
the
work
result,
back.
and that would be someplace to establish consensus or whatever. Agreement would be, if everybody at least agrees on the end result, we can back up from there and map around the process to get there while you guys get busy getting started. I don't know, does that work with the Agile? Because I don't know anything about Agile. So is it consistent?
It is consistent, yeah, but
haven't studied
it's
it.
largely, it's dependent on the product manager and how they set.
So, and then we were just saying, at least do value, just like you guys said, at least value the fact that we exist. And what we hope you don't do is get started without knowing what you're after. So, at least take a minute and then get started. Don't fix what isn't broken. I don't know, it's a nice old saying, but you can get busy doing a lot of other things and then realize it wasn't what you were supposed to, but you're so quick about it, you missed something obvious.
Process people like that steadiness. If something's working, let's keep it. Let's keep doing.
Unless
what's
it proves
working.
itself out. Unless it proves itself out that it's the wrong track.
Then we want the best thing. We want the best
And
solution.
then I guess we wrote, don't leave prematurely. Like if the meeting's over, but you haven't figured out what comes next, definitely at least have that continuity. And make sure it's clear as to who's going to do what. So those are good meetings when that's outlined. And then my pet peeve was, aside from the one I just said over there about being sloppy, my pet peeve was not creating just make work or busy work, just work for the sake of work. I think that's not who we are about. Even though I think sometimes people think that's what process people are about. It's just creating busy work, but it's not really busy work. So really getting at the core of what that is, because I think that could be misunderstood.
This is a really great overview of the process folks, and also the board is very reflective of process people, of systematic, right? We have our little asterisks and our arrows and our numbers and our hash marks, and that's very indicative of process people. This is how we're going to tackle it. 1, 2, 3, 4. Let's go. People, give us the scoop on what's going on here.
So the first thing that I wanted to say is that I think all of us probably have a little bit of process, product, and people in us. And so I think that's just that's important to remember. I know we don't have a lot of time, and so contrary to popular expectation, I'll move quickly. So things that we say about ourselves is that we're great listeners, we care about how other people feel, we really like working on teams. We would much prefer that to working independently. We have big hearts. We're actually very good at, even though we don't like conflict, we're very good at resolving that conflict once it happens. And sometimes it's hard for us to say no. What other people say about us is that we're empathetic, that we have good people skills, that we tend to avoid conflict, that we have a tendency to talk about things rather than act, that sometimes we get too emotionally involved on projects, which can connect to the avoiding conflict, and also that we're helpful or will help you out. As far as things that we appreciate and we'd like you to do is, tell us how you're feeling if you're upset, if you think the project isn't working, things like that. Show us respect, respond to emails, which is very consistent with the show respect thing. Be collaborative, ask for our opinion, give us clear action goals. And I would say this entire board, this is the one that's the most important, because any smart people person who's gotten to where they are probably knows how to get things done, but having clear goals is the most important part of that. Because then they can say at the end of the day, we had this 2-hour meeting, but look, here's your result.
Awesome.
Don't
So true.
don't shut us, or continue to talk to us. Treat people fairly. So like even if there's a hierarchical system, allow everyone to have a voice and have input is very important. Things that you shouldn't do, which are kind of the inverse of the do's, is don't ignore us, don't text us unless you really have to, don't hide your feelings, don't be selfish or standoffish or dominant.
These are very true of the different styles. I think the other thing for the people also extremely valuable on teams, not there just to create the camaraderie and the friendships, but piece about liking or resolving conflict. There's often the misinterpretation that because you're a people person that you can't resolve conflict or you want to avoid conflict, but those are the people on the team you need to lean on to resolve conflict, right? When you're in a creative space, the process people you have to lean on because they are going to work so hard to find the perfect solution. And the product people are going to give you those deadlines, right? And pull you away from being so attached to all the information and get it out there. So there's this beautiful balance that needs to happen. And we have a little bit of a off balance maybe in the room, but there's still, you still need to be looking for these qualities, but most importantly, planning for how to do the do's and the don'ts, those people on your team. Because you will cross over and bring different styles to the table. It was very easy for every group to come up with do's and don'ts. It's really how you want to be worked with, and it's very important to be worked with in that way. So what I want to do is have everyone just head back to your tables where we left a resource for you to sort of build on that, and then we will close up. I know it's time, but I just want to point you to that resource and one other resource, and then we can close out the session. Just want to leave you with this thought. If you were to have your personal best, the best meeting you could ever have with your team, what would it look like? So my challenge to you is think about if we're going to convene as a group, we're going to have the best meeting we've ever had, what would you do? How would you prepare? Where would you have the meeting? Think about every little detail. And so what would you do if you had the best meeting ever? What would it take? Or what would it take to have the best next 6 weeks or next semester or next project, the best team, the best project or the next best 6 weeks you could ever have together? What would you actually do to contribute to that? And how would you set it up to be that? Make it happen. Try it out. Try some of the norms. Talk to your team about the behaviors or the norms that you want to set on the team. Put something out there and try to make it the best that it could be. With that said, there is a worksheet about applying the TeamWorks model, and it has you thinking about if there is one person on your team that you want to have a higher performing relationship with, who would it be? What do you think their style is? And what can you do within the 3 Ps model? What can you do differently to work with that person's style? So that's a little bit of a commitment to that particular relationship. And then it has a team ready check-in on the bottom. So I was talking a little bit about how do we make sure that when we connect as a group that we're paying attention to all these styles and appreciating the do's and the don'ts, and that gives you some hints there for how to do that with each style. So when we want our meetings in particular to be really productive, what can you do to make that check-in, that time together, a great hour, 2 hours, whatever it is, for all those different styles? So I'll leave you with that last sheet, but does anyone have any outstanding questions on the styles or anything that we talked about today, the stages of team development? Any questions? Thank you so much for the active participation, lots of dialogue.